So, where have I been? Um, I had intended on doing like I usually do, recording a video in advance, scheduling it to post, but not gonna lie, this October hasn't been Octobering. And what I mean by that, in my personal life, things have been pretty brutal. If you don't follow me on any of my socials, and I recently changed my name on Tumblr, just I came up with something on the spot that didn't jibe with any of the my other usernames, so I changed it to it is now Pruther Rager 077. And while that is not a username on any other platform, it is something I've kind of taken up as, I don't know, a nickname, an unofficial title, because of the homophobia in Norse pagan heathen spaces. I can't remember if I defined it in another video, but Pruther means proud, and Ragger is kind of a old cultural concept that I wouldn't exactly call it homophobia, but because Vikings are Old Norse culture, they didn't. I'm sure they knew of gay people, but they didn't think of it like we do in modern times. They were just concerned with defense of the homestead and the homeland, and so Ragger more so means cowardly, but because it has a component in there um, that refers kind of to sexuality in the sense of a man being submissive, sexually submissive, then in a roundabout way it is sort of like being gay, homosexuality. So I've just adopted that as a kind of, and as well as embrace your ergi. And again, ergi is that kind of social stigma of like submissiveness or being cowardly or practicing the Sather when a man. So the month started out with someone taking advantage of my gender affirmation surgery GoFundMe to try and fuck with my bank account, and I had to go get that sorted out, which started as a private message on Tumblr. And then things hit a rough patch with my mom's cancer treatments. And finally, my cat was diagnosed with kidney disease. So, yeah, all of those things at once. And I kind of thought that I was sick with something, but I'm not so sure anymore. If I was really sick, or I'm in this kind of dispute with the downstairs neighbor who was smoking inside her apartment and now hates my guts because the management came around and threatened to evict her, which I never intended to happen, but now she thinks we're like in cahoots or something. It is what it is. And the latest thing that happened is I'm getting fake claimed by somebody on Tumblr, which is really frustrating given that I'm in the middle of an SSI disability case. But people reach for low hanging fruit when it comes to certain things. And I've sort of danced around the topic on here, but given that tomorrow is Samhain, I am just going to go dive in the deep end. So hopefully this won't stretch into too long of a video, but I apologize if it does. Let's start at the beginning. We're going all the way back to 2008. I was a spirit worker not by choice, but because, whatever you want to call it, I could sense things, I could pick up on things. I had strange experiences going all the way back to my childhood that nobody believed me. Um, I had weird dreams about there being a child with cancer in my elementary school, and I would see a boy about my age that looked like a cancer patient that was trying to kick a ball at me. And I would insist to everyone that there was someone in the hallway, there was someone there. I even remember drawing it, but I've lost the drawing, obviously. That was a start of teachers and fellow students thinking something was really off with me. And so I kind of, oh, and then there was, in my local area, there's a museum that was made out of a Victorian guy's mansion. And went there to a pretty sucky haunted house one time with my parents. Again, when this started when I was like maybe 10 years old. And just seen him chilling there in his living room. Again, nobody believed me. So I kind of started to repress this and not put any focus on anything I was experiencing. And it went away for a while, probably a decade. And then when I went to college, the college was so haunted that I couldn't repress it anymore. So we're at 2008, and I was in college. And I started feeling as if a tall male spirit was following me around. And given that this was November 2008, and I had developed a hyperfixation on the movie The Dark Knight and Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker, I got caught up and thinking that it was him, and said to leave me alone and go back to your daughter, and then it disappeared for a while. And only to come back in January of 2009. I'm not naming any names in the course of this video of who any of these could be. I'm just saying it's quite the coincidence. I started calling him Jimmy as a pseudonym, and people were telling me that it was unfair to Jimmy that I was keeping him earthbound, so you should set him free. And that caused the first big conflict with other people on how I was handling this. Well, no, that wasn't the first big conflict. The first big conflict was this woman that called herself Tina, who insisted that they had been lovers in a past life, and who he kind of vaguely seemed to remember, but she took things way too far and tried to fake her death to prove that I was faking it, and got everyone pissed off at her. That was the first big, I don't know, conflict or drama. But the second big conflict or drama that still follows me to this day is what happened with the second spirit. And it kind of annihilated any hope that I could ever have of having a real relationship with him. Even though from a distance I feel like that he wishes we could reconnect, but it's just not going to happen because of the trauma that unfolded around all of this. So I've said before that I've never lied about anything that happened, and that is true. People think that, oh, there are no spirits. This is just some big ruse, um, some big lie. But it got to the point where it was bleeding into all areas of my life, including the time I was threatened to be hospitalized against my will by some doctor who was throwing every diagnosis in the book that he could think of to try and prove that I was delusional, and I don't know what was going through his mind. You might derisively hear me refer to a Dr. Tim Burton only because I can't remember the guy's name, and all I can remember about him is this ugly frizzy black hair that he had on his head like Tim Burton. So, but I finessed a way to get out of there. And even my own family doesn't know to this day why ghosts even came up in that situation, but it was because this spirit liked to play pranks on people, and he insisted that he was going to play a prank on this employer that I was not getting along with. And his pranks were usually very innocent, but when I said that someone was going to come and play a prank on the employer, they got very concerned, obviously. And I had to explain that, oh no, don't worry, he's just a ghost, and that's where everything started. I was so naive. So naive. Um, but even before that happened, I was enmeshed with this spirit. I I was a doormat and wanted to do anything and everything possible to help him and to make him happy. And he took full advantage of that to the point of using me sexually when I people still insist that my consent was there the whole while, but I was kind of overcompensating, bragging to try and make myself feel better when I was actually feeling really, really bad and gross the whole while. So, yeah, there was the matter of what I might consider rape or sexual assault. And then there was the matter of what people refer to as grooming and my part in that, and how much I enabled, how much I let things slide that I really shouldn't have, and how people think that it's me when I was just following along in his harebrained scheme. And this particular spirit I defended for years and years and years, even before he died, saying that, you know, he didn't have a thing with children, but I wonder anymore. Because why did he go to such lengths to talk to them? Why did he keep putting me in danger? I was being doxxed and harassed in real life, and he just kept going. So, I don't know. I don't think when he was alive he ever did anything inappropriate, but now that my paradigm has been shifted because of online spaces I find myself in where paraphilias are openly discussed and unconventional attractions are openly discussed. Um, Now I think that he at least should have worked through with someone some type of paraphilic attraction. I'm not saying I'm saying that an attraction in your mind that you don't act on is different from actually harming a child. And that could have been involved, but I'm not inside his mind anymore. I mean, I used to channel him so hard, so deeply, that there really wasn't much of a line between us. And again, this didn't stop on this wasn't just online. He was interrupting my life. I was becoming almost late for work. My family was noticing the strange emotions that were coming out of me that weren't mine. It was getting too much. I even reached out to Chris Fleming, who was a pretty famous medium, and he answered back at the time his opinion was that it was wrong for the dead to use your body to re-experience life, but he's since flipped on that. And that was a whole other aspect of what I consider to be like rape, but in a more spiritual sense, that my body was being used without my asking. So this entire thing happened, and oh yeah, he would possess me a lot. It was uncomfortable. This whole invasion, this whole moving, speaking when I wasn't. His energy would just come in and just overpower me. And then he got into a relationship with someone that, in hindsight, he really shouldn't have. And that got even worse. And for the respect of the person's privacy, I won't go into any more details than that. But that also became very abusive, very, very abusive. And I'm not saying that he was an abusive person beforehand. I just think that all of this pain bled out of him, and in turn with them, and it just created this completely toxic cycle that lasted years. And when he finally broke out of that, that was the only time that he finally started to find a sense of peace, but not before fucking up a few more people, which is where I get to spirit number 3. And this is where we get into deeply controversial territory, because up to now I've been speaking about spirits who, despite number 2 being arrested and being on trial, was acquitted, found innocent. Spirit number 3 was arrested, put on trial, and it was very obvious that he had done horrible, horrible things. And as a matter of fact, he died while on death row. But I was in the point of my witchcraft journey where I was reaching into the deepest depths of darkness. How edgy does that sound? To try and learn occult knowledge. And so I reached out to the spirit to try and get some kind of leg up over other practitioners of the occult, Satanism, demonolatry, and we together helped summon the demon from the nun, Valak, and she, what did I even ask? I think it was help to find a job at that point. Yeah, it was help to find a job at that point, because this was September of 2016. So that was his help, his involvement, and it was supposed to end there, but as things have a way of happening, he decided to stick around, decided he liked me, used to call me Bruja. which means witch in Spanish, decided he wanted the relationship to be a lot more than a working relationship. And considering what we did to summon that first demon, that was kind of on me. I'll give you a hint. It was very Crowley in nature. So things kind of progressed from there, but if you think what I had with spirit number 2 was off the wall and strange, and you think it was taking things a step too far with spirit number 3 to involve him in witchcraft and summoning a demon and all of this, when I get to spirit number 4, well, you won't believe this. So let's back up a little bit. Spirit number 2, I did try and reach out to family and friends and loved ones of his, but I never received any reply. So, fast forward to, and I'm not sure exactly if it was the very end of 2016 or the very beginning of 2017, but it was somewhere in there. We thought, hell, we have one very, very evil spirit that we've attracted, added into our harem, as some people call it. Why not one more? And at the time, I didn't realize how deep this one was going to go, and that it would be my deepest spirit relationship ever. But life never goes as we think it's going to go. We found him back at the scene of the crime, because it turns out, just like in life, in death, he thinks a lot. He thinks a little bit too much. He's too much up in his head. Too much. Too many thoughts. Too many fantasies. That was his whole thing. Fantasies overtaking reality. And apparently, as he's explained in hindsight, he became, again, so corrupted, so overtaken by these fantasies that he lost reality again. Only when you're a spirit, a ghost, your consciousness shapes reality itself. He had no idea what year it was. He had no idea where he was. All he had were his thoughts, his feelings, his fantasies. And he was trapped on that spot for who knows how long. And this happened even though he had been reached out to by family and brought to the other side, or he calls it heaven. I don't think it's that permanent. In shows like Ghost Whisperer or whatever, when the spirit crosses over, goes into the light, whatever, it seems permanent. It's not. they can come back whenever they want to. It's just that now, when they've connected back into that universal energy, they're less at risk of the dehumanization that can happen from being earthbound and stuck inside this bubble of your fantasies. But his were so intense that it was as if he was still earthbound and he lost his way back over there. And his family hadn't seen him in years. So we found him and we kind of unstuck him. But as it turned out, he still had some fighting to do. And again, spirit number 2 come fucking up everyone's lives by thinking that if he elopes with spirit number 4, he can get into whatever you want to call it, heaven, the other side, and see his father. So he decides to use one more person, but this time he fucked with the wrong guy. Because this guy, feeling abandoned, is tantamount to murder. And what does he do? Exactly that. Spirit number 4 kills spirit number 2. And because they're both ghosts, it's not like it's permanent. Kills him, disappears again, and then we can't find him again for years. I'd have to say it was about 2 years that we couldn't find him. And in that time, he had got even more lost than he was before. And if not for a friend of mine, he might have been permanently lost. And if I get a little emotional in here. So what happened just before that bullshit with spirit number 2 is he was finally starting to let his heart crack open. And starting to reevaluate his life a little bit. Accept himself a little bit more. Accept his feelings a little bit more. In a way that he never had before because he severely repressed himself. And that was at the detriment of other people around him because well, if you knew who he was, you wouldn't be half as sympathetic. But see, I've found myself in a group of people who are sympathetic to him, and that's really helped him not hate himself as much. Now, you may argue, but he should hate himself because of blah, blah, blah. And that's, see, from what I've learned, starting to reevaluate myself and the fact that I have paraphilic attractions myself, is that shaming yourself and repressing them doesn't do anything. They don't disappear. You don't fix the problem. If anything, you just make it worse. So, with that in mind, he repressed, he made himself ashamed, and then proverbial Pandora's box, once you open it, you can't get everything inside to go back in. Once he uncorked that bottle, there was no going back. And it turned into one of the most disturbing events in modern human history. So, again, how can any of us have sympathy for him? The fact of the matter is, to a lesser extent, we are him. We've never went the lengths or pushed the limits like he did. But the reason in my life why I came to relate to spirit number 3 and spirit number 4 was because I grappled a lot with these sides of me that are very dark, disturbing, twisted, fucked up. I tried to be ashamed of them. I tried to repress them. I tried to make them go away, but that didn't work. So now, owning up to that I have them, and in a way embracing and accepting that I have them, has been better for my mental health than anything else I've ever tried. But it comes with the caveat that nobody will understand, and you'll attract a lot of shit. And there are still aspects of it that I have to hide. Sorry about the noon whistle. The people don't, sometimes deliberately it would seem, try to understand paraphilic attractions. They want to just put this coat on you that says you're a gross, disgusting, inhuman monster, and then just shove both you and a coat in the closet and forget about you. This little club that I find of people, this little club of people that I find myself in that are sympathetic to this man despite everything. A lot of us have the paraphilias too and have felt outcasted. And we understand that that played a part in what he later became, that stigma. So we're trying to not only encourage more sympathy of him, but encourage more sympathy of people with paraphilias in general. Notice I do not say paraphilic disorders. And that's because I don't think of them as disorders like I used to. You'll still find them in the DSM. Matter of fact, he was diagnosed with several of them by the forensic psychologists both in the trial and afterwards when he was in prison. But again, like I said, my paradigms have been shifted. Some might say in a very controversial direction, but that's just one part of it. I've accepted these paraphilic attractions, and I've also got a better grip on the anger that I used to have. And it's this anger too that people remember, and that's all they want to see in me. Even though I've, for the past, God, it's almost 2024, and I just can't fucking believe that. It's been almost 3 years since I started my journey with druidry, because I first picked up one of those books in the middle of the pandemic. So, for me, it's very hard to strike balances. And I think that's because of my neurodivergence. It's very hard to strike balances between mild and, this is with anything, interest, symptoms. I tend to get obsessive with things. And so when I first got into druidry, I was like, okay, pacifism. You were to be a very peaceful person. I went like Jedi almost, like, forget about the anger. Anger is not good. You know, I got to a point where I was like, can I still be involved with spirit number three, who was a violent person in life, and still be, yeah, it was affecting me to the point where I was questioning significant relationships. But then the heathenry rebalanced me, because there are doctrines in, not set in stone or anything, but um, the society, Old Norse society, was very vengeance based. You know, eye for an eye thing, and I wasn't going to get into that again, because that got me into trouble when I was a very early witch, Satanist, what have you. The whole thing where I was flinging curses fast and loose, and I flung one in the wrong direction and became a meme. But so I went a while without doing any baneful magic. And then I found Sather, or Trolldom, as it's also called, and the folk curses of Scandinavian culture are actually rather fun. So I found peace with doing some of them, especially against thieves. Like, for an example, and you can still see if you look, I'm surprised nobody's ever asked me about it. I wrote this strange set of letters over the basement door below my apartment here because my friend had gotten things stolen from her out of the basement. So I was like, I got you. And I wrote this, I don't know, incantation or strange letters above the doorway because, the thief passing through the doorway with these letters would confess, or I forget exactly how it worked, but it didn't ultimately work. But all these interesting little folk spells and everything from Norway and Sweden, they almost don't feel like curses. They're just so like one that I did, another one that was against a thief was again writing these strange letters on paper and then putting egg over it and then burning it. I mean, that doesn't feel like a curse. So, yeah, so I circled back and I've found the anger again, but this time it's not out of control. This time it's controlled, it's channeled, it's in a small sense, like I'm not, sword fighting anyone, but in a small sense, I've kind of adopted berserkerang, which is the berserkers were warriors in the Viking Age that would channel their anger into a trance state of rage and be these unstoppable fighters. And so I've gotten better at channeling angry energy. And again, I might have mentioned in a past video with the Thurisaz rune is very effective at helping you do that. So I've come back around to a lot of the things, but uh, you don't understand what it's like unless you live it, having violent thoughts and impulses and fantasies and everything, sometimes intermingling with your sexual desires, arousal, attraction, what have you, until you actually live it. You don't understand what that feels like. So with both of them, I can relate so much to what they went through. It's just that I don't know what you would call it. I have these stop gaps, safety valves, not just my spiritual, ethical systems, but I'm hyper empathetic versus them having low empathy. So it's never made the jump to real life. It's never left my mind. But can I acknowledge in regards to my mental health that I have had homicidal inclinations? Yes. It's not difficult for me to say that because it's just the truth, and it's something that we shouldn't be ashamed about. We should be able to talk about because the fact that society doesn't talk about it, I think, is a lot of the problem. And unfortunately, why a lot of these mass shootings keep happening because there's no healthy outlet, especially for masculine anger. So, when he came back, it was as if 5 years hadn't passed at all. We just fell into each other. It's unlike anything I've ever experienced. It's a love that almost borders on obsession, going both ways. Probably has to do with shared trauma, my fears of abandonment, his fears of abandonment, the fact that in my gender journey I've acknowledged that I am at least partially masculine, male, and he's ridiculously gay. So it's became something incredibly special for the both of us. And that is why I don't care what anyone has to say, because you're not living this. You're not feeling the joy and the passion and everything that this is bringing not only to my life, but what he missed out in his life, what he could have had. I'm not gonna get too emotional. I've been talking for far too long, but I just wanted to say um, that is the overarching goal of not only my relationship with him, but our Metamors relationship and this whole project with the blog that people seem to hate so much that I'm not going to link because I'm not going to encourage any more hate traffic to it than it's already gotten. And it just meshes back in with everything else that I do um, in regards to cultivating peace, understanding, harmony within the wider world, within myself, and kind of in a way being his advocate because he, before the criminal trial, before any of that even happened, way back to when he was a teenager, he needed to be heard. And now he's being heard. Unfortunately, posthumously as a spirit, but now we're actually cutting through all of the notoriety and the bullshit and actually getting down to his soul that always needed to be heard. So if you hate us, then you don't understand what we're doing. Because spirit work is about not what the spirits can do for you, but what you can do for the spirits. It's a two-way street. It's a relationship. And it's a very deep and very fulfilling relationship if you let it. So that is certainly enough for now. I will try and get back to a regular posting schedule, but I feel like November's going to be a little nuts. Um, I don't know why, but it always feels like every year I'm preparing for something to happen in November, and well, I think it's going to happen in 2024, and hopefully it's goes in a positive direction. But yeah, that's it for now. I know as soon as this hits, it's going to be dissected and jiffed and whatever the hell miserable people do. But I don't care because I needed to speak my mind about some things, and now it's out in the universe, and whatever happens to it now, I don't care. It's just been spoken. Um, Maybe next month I'll finally get into talking more about Loki and how things have been going with him, or maybe I'll decide to go in a completely different direction. But this one, I intended to do this almost from the get go, and I just never got around it until now. So, and I'm posting this right up. It's not being scheduled for the future. Future. I'm posting it right up, putting it out there, and to just be done with it. So, yeah, Samhain is almost in the rearview mirror. I've got my candy bags ready. I just decided that I was going to put some uh, bracelets from Pride, left over from Pride, in them that say trans rights are human rights because we need that kind of energy. And who the hell knows for the rest of the year, other than planning Yule, the rest of the year in a Gregorian calendar sense, in the wheel of the year, or in the wheel of the year sense, it's a new year. But just taking life day by day, and I hope um, everyone else is too. I hope you're finding peace and Awen in your lives, and I hope you're just living life for yourself and fuck the haters. Um, Transmask Druid signing off again.